Hi, I'm Randy Altman with Post Perspective. We're here at Siggraph 2019. This is Jay Cooper from ILM, and he worked on Avengers Endgame. Can you talk about what your role on the film was, and maybe some of your favorite bits?
Yeah, so I was a compositing supervisor and associate visual effects supervisor for ILM. And my favorite bits, well, there was so much. That's the great thing about these shows is it's sort of the kitchen sink. These movies are huge, massive undertakings with hundreds of artists. So we have everything from, the smallest kind of Thor fat suit fix-its, where he had sort of a zipper up the back, to massive environments of, obviously Smart Hulk was a huge part of what we contributed. But for me, the stuff that I like the most is sort of the stuff where Marvel comes to us and say, well, we don't know what this is going to be, can you figure this out? And one of the things that fit the bill for me was the time traveling aspects. So when the Avengers have to go into the quantum realm, which we're introduced to in, we're first introduced to it in Ant-Man 1, and then when I worked on Ant-Man 2, Ant-Man and the Wasp, I think it was what it was called, we did a little bit more, and then we returned to it again. So there's the quantum tunnels, and there's the quantum travel, and so the fun thing for me was it kind of has to be the same but different. You never want to do the same thing again.
Yeah.
So it's, but there's also story to tell. So in the sequence that I'm thinking of, we have our Avengers team, and they're all traveling into the quantum realm to go back in time. Well, that's a bit of a spoiler. If you haven't seen the movie now, I think it's too late for you. And so we have to all go down to their different tubes, so to speak. But along the journey, it all looks very interesting. So we have these cascading levels of detail. We have all this sort of interesting, heavily treated imagery that flies by, and particles and treatments on our characters. And we have what we call the onion skinning, where they're flicking off little parts of themselves as they get smaller or travel. That's always the number one question. Are they getting smaller or are they traveling? Something that we continually ask ourselves. Anyway, so those are the things that kind of appeal to me. Things where we don't know what it's going to be at the beginning, and then it's sort of a voyage of discovery. I think that's as a compositor and as an artist, those are the parts that are sort of the most enjoyable.
And it helps when you have a client who's willing to listen to a variety of different inputs.
Absolutely. Well, for us, it's usually, well, what is it going to be? And we have some idea, so we throw something out there, and then we get sort of a laundry list of this part's working, this part's not. What if you did this? What if you did that? So it's always like a great conversation of exploring what we can potentially do. And then, of course, as inevitably happens on these movies, there's a deadline, and so we keep on trying to focus the conversation and try to figure out how to do these things in a timely manner.
Because you could probably noodle things forever if given the opportunity.
Yeah, there's an expression in visual effects that shots aren't finished, they're always abandoned. And I think that's really true for us, that we try to get them to the best state they are. And there's always, I'm not going to kid you, there's always something more you can do. So it's really finding what is the best use of our time and what is the best use of our talents.
And also, it's important to be able to walk away and say, you know what?
Right.
They're not going to see that.
Right.
It's going to be all right.
That's the very famous Dennis Muren quote, or semi-famous Dennis Muren quote, if no one's looking there, don't worry about that. And even he gives a talk about how in War of the Worlds, which is a movie I worked on in 2000-something, 3 maybe, where there's this shot of a truck that comes off, gets thrown up by the alien, and it lands on another truck, and we never painted out the rig. And you can watch the shot over and over again, and you look at it and you go, oh. And then you say, hey, did you notice that there's a rig that hasn't been removed? And you never notice. Time and time, yeah, I know. So now you're going to go back.
I am
Go back to the intersection and look for a rig that wasn't painted out.
Absolutely going to do that.
Yeah. I don't know. That might have to get cut. We'll see if that passes muster.
You have to check back
Back at the home office.
Yeah. Trends. Let's talk about trends.
Sure.
What do you expect to see here? I know it's day one, so you might not have seen a whole lot. But what do you expect to see at the show?
Right.
What's going to be helpful in your workflow?
Well, it's funny because we're at ILM. We're sort of on the leading edge of facial motion capture technology. We have a number of proprietary systems for doing markerless facial capture and markered facial capture. But that, I think, is the big trend I'm seeing at Siggraph this year, is tons of tools for facial motion capture, driving real-time solutions, driving solutions for real-time people, and then actually just doing proxy application to CG characters and beasts and other sorts of creatures like that. So I think that that's one of the big trends this year.
Where are we at in terms of how close are we to getting a digital human that really looks
Well, I would argue that we've been there already. Maybe with, in bits and moments. Obviously there's our work on with Moff Tarkin on Rogue One, and then some work we've done with Will Smith in, let's see, I'm going to forget the movie, the one with the genie.
Yes.
Aladdin, thank you. Got a little help from whispering Aladdin. And then of course, what we did on Smart Hulk for Avengers Endgame, that's a little bit different because you're not necessarily recreating Mark Ruffalo, but in terms of a photoreal human, I think we're there more or less. Again, it's not a question of if you can do it at all. It's a question of whether you can do it for 90 minutes. And so we've got some other shows, some other movies that are coming up that I'm sure I can't talk about. The Irishman, I guess I can talk about. We have another movie for Netflix coming up called The Irishman, where there's led by Pablo Hellman, who's a fantastic visual effects supervisor, where they take Joe Pesci and Robert De Niro and Al Pacino, and they euthanize. I guess that's not the right word. They don't put them. They don't kill them, but they take 30 years, 40 years off of their lifespan, and they're recreating their careers as in their 30s and 40s.
That's cool.
Which is amazing. And that movie is, for example, I'm not going to speak too much about it because it hasn't come out, but that is some really bleeding edge technology that we're really proud of.
It's very cool.
Yeah.